we are honored to
Yay.
have someone joining us who is, well, one of my personal heroes and a hero to many of us. His name is Jeffrey Tucker. Jeffrey Tucker is an
Yay,
author,
Jeffrey, yay.
best-selling author, and all-around wonderful guy and philosopher. Jeffrey, thanks for being with us today.
And so dapper, by the way.
Very dapper.
Always.
Welcome aboard, Jeff.
Well, let me say it's a pleasure to be able to open this event. The case of Ross is so important to our country's future and the future of liberty itself. And I'm just so grateful to all of you for caring so much and organizing this, and to all the listeners and anybody who will step up and make a contribution to helping this great cause. It's not just about Ross, though it is about Ross, but it's also about freedom itself.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Jeffrey, you have a perspective that is historical. I love listening to your messages. I've read, I think, almost every book you have, and you have a way of looking at what's going on in the world and where we are changing. What do you see happening now in our world as it reflects on Ross and the historical ramifications of where we are, of being able to have freedom and people be able to interchange with each other in a free way?
Well, from a historical point of view, to care about the imprisoned is an essential precondition to the defense of an establishment of liberty in the world. If we're just going to forget about people because they've been locked away, or have faced a judge and faced an unfair judgment, and just put out there, and we say, well, I guess that doesn't matter anymore. None of us are going to be free for very long. The fate of prisoners like this is very much bound up with the cause of human rights. And that's why, since the ancient world, humanitarians have pleaded with us: pray for the imprisoned, work for justice. Do not forget about those who have been locked away. They're human beings just like you. They've faced an unfortunate situation in their lives, but they live and breathe, have souls, and every day is just like your day, but they face it behind bars. So, you know, the progress of civilization that we've seen over really 3,000 years has been, it's depended very heavily on people who care about cases just like this. And it's true that it may not directly affect you, but in a way, it's the most important thing you could do, because human rights are universal and freedoms are universal. And when somebody has been singled out the way Ross has been done, to be made an example of for a purely, for what I can tell, a purely political case, that's a serious problem. And you can make a contribution to freeing the world and making the world a more just and humane place by caring, by praying, by sending in your contributions, sending in your notes, and just by being here. It shows that you can do something for the sake of humanity.
Yes, indeed.
Beautiful.
Well, Jeff, I want to ask you a question, because we see what is happening in the world, and sometimes it can get very depressing. I like your way of approaching it. I've heard you speak about the optimism we have for the future. It seems like we're bouncing like a ping pong ball back and forth sometimes, that maybe it's going to be good, maybe it's not. Yeah. What are your thoughts? And is the glass half full or half empty?
I like to look at it like this. These kinds of injustices, they slow us down, but they can't win in the long run. Technology and the passion for freedom that we're seeing alive in the world today, the fact that we can come together like this just in this moment is a wonderful thing. You know, for centuries, people like us had to be silent. We had to just accept the fate. We had to say, well, our masters have decided a certain way that we have to live, and so we have to comply. But we don't have to do that anymore. We've been given the tools to fight back and to speak out. And I just don't believe that despotism can forever survive this kind of grassroots pressure that we're seeing build around the world, to have our own media, to have our own conversations, our own communities, and to speak out about things like this. So as I say, they can slow us down. You know, they can cause us problems, and you know, I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic about the state of human freedom, but in a weird, in a funny way, the case of Ross has been a really interesting corrective in my own mind. because it's never a clear path from here to there. I think we're going to get there, but there's a lot of bumps along the way and some real victims and people who are suffering because we're not where we want to be. And the case of Ross is a great example of that. It should inspire us to work harder for the brilliant future that I think is there for us. But as I say, it's not a straight path. There's a lot of bumps along the road. So I always try to remember Ross, always. And all my optimism and all my, techno-utopianism, people might call it. I'm very confident that the future is ours. But the case of Ross shows that we've got a lot of work to do. But, I look at it like this, we build the future that's in our heads right now. It's what we care about now that's going to determine what kind of future we have. It's the ideas we hold in our heads. It's whether we care. And the more people we can inspire to be involved in cases like this, the better the future is going to be.
I'd have to agree. I think that's something that we can look forward to and see. The opportunities are enormous. The opportunities for entrepreneurs are great. And Ross is out there as someone who is showing us where we are, what we can do, and we remain optimistic. I like the way you say that, Jeffrey. You help us a lot. Lynn, anything you want to add before we have to say goodbye to Jeffrey Tucker?
Well, as always, Jeffrey puts it so well and in such an inspiring way. And I just want to thank you for all your support of Ross and our efforts over the years, Jeffrey. It's really
well.
nice.
He's been a personal inspiration to me. And I've never known him personally that well, but it's a funny way that when you follow a person's life so carefully, you begin to kind of understand and empathize very deeply, and you realize there's a sense of oneness that we all feel with him. As an innovator, as a creator, as an idealist. I mean, this is what people need to understand about Ross, that he is an idealist, a young man who longs for a more peaceful, beautiful, and just social order. Everything about his life points to this.
Yes, he certainly is.
And so in that way, he's an inspiration to us all.
He certainly is. Well, Jeffrey Tucker, we appreciate the work you're doing. And if somebody says, hey, I want to get in touch with that Jeffrey Tucker guy, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I'm writing every day at fee.org. You can write me anytime at tucker@fee.org. Of course, I'm on Twitter. Of course, I'm on Facebook and all the rest of it. And I would encourage these kinds of contacts. I think the building of the kinds of communities that the Ross case is inspiring are really foundational for the future. We're going to have to build the freedom that we want to see in the world, and it comes through our own efforts, the way we commit our lives and even our finances. This is the way we're going to free the world. We can't rely. I think we've learned this. We can't rely on politicians, and this is a good thing. So thank you for all you're doing. For this
you
case.
bet. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Jeffrey.